Today I want to talk to you about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, relationship edition. Based on a book called Why Marriages Succeed or Fail by Dr. John Gottman, the four horsemen are really four attitudes that can predict the ending of a relationship made worse when they're combined. Dr. Gottman studied more than 2,000 married couples over 2 decades. He discovered patterns about how partners relate to each other. These patterns can be used to predict, with about 90% accuracy, which marriages will succeed and which will fail. The need to consider our four horsemen friends comes up pretty often in therapy because it speaks to the way in which we relate to one another within our relationships. Primarily used within the context of couples therapy, the four horsemen can also be applied to most relationship types. It's really any time where two people risk getting stuck while communicating. According to Gottman, each of the horsemen paves the way for the next one down the list. We'll go through them one by one so you see what they look like. And stay tuned because at the end of the video, I'll also share some remedies to help you get out of these traps. The first horseman is criticism. This looks like attacking your partner's personality or character, usually with the intent of making someone right or someone wrong. We might say things like, "You always stuff things up," or "You never listen to me." "You're the type of person who likes to ruin things," or even, "Why are you so annoying?" The next horseman is contempt. And this is a pretty bad one to have towards your partner. Contempt looks like attacking your partner's sense of self with the intention to insult or psychologically abuse him or her. Here, our opinion of others are very low, as if we no longer respect the other person. Some examples are insults and name-calling like bitch, bastard, wimp, fat, stupid, ugly, slob, lazy, and the like. Hostile humor like sarcasm or mockery can also be used. Even body language can convey contempt. Tone of voice, sneering, rolling your eyes, or curling your upper lip are all part of this. The next horseman to speak about is defensiveness. I can imagine that when criticism and contempt are hurled our way, we might want to defend ourselves. However, doing that can make us see ourselves as the victim who's warding off a perceived attack. The following kinds of defensiveness can be damaging to a relationship. Making excuses, like for example, pointing to an external circumstance beyond your control which forced you to act in that certain way. Which would sound something like, "It's not my fault the washing got wet on the line. I was going to bring it in like you asked, but the rain came earlier than I expected." Cross-complaining is meeting your partner's complaint or criticism with a complaint or criticism of your own, ignoring what your partner said. It goes something like, "I'm not lazy, you're lazy." Disagreeing and then cross-complaining. The old 1-2 combo. This one sounds something like, "That's not true, you're the one who does that," or "I did this because you did that." Some other classic styles of defense include yes butting, which is starting off agreeing and then disagreeing, repeating yourself without paying attention to what the other person's saying, or whining, which sounds something like, "That's not fair." Finally, when all the other methods fail, there's the last trusty horseman, the stonewall. This is when we withdraw from the relationship as a way of avoiding conflict. Partners may think they're trying to be neutral, but stonewalling conveys disapproval, icy distance, separation, disconnection, and even could be perceived as smugness. This approach looks like stony silence, monosyllabic mutterings, changing the subject, removing yourself physically, and the old silent treatment. So, if you're sitting there thinking, "Gosh, I do all of these," then stop it. But also listen on, because I'd like to share some remedies with you so you don't leave here feeling worse than when you first started. So to start off, maybe you can watch my assertiveness video at some point. and learn how to better articulate yourself and communicate effectively. In the meantime, though, you can use this little tactic. Learn to make specific complaints and requests. That sounds something like, when X happened, I felt Y, I would prefer Z. When you left the wet towel on the floor, I felt annoyed, and I would prefer if you put used towels in the hamper. Next is conscious communication, and that's speaking the unarguable truth and listening generously. There's nothing more valuable to us than attention. And when we're trying to get out of the Four Horsemen rut, it's best to listen generously and pay careful attention. The other part of this is speaking the truth. This is so important for so many reasons that it could probably have its own video. But for now, trust in the process of speaking the truth, even though it could be painful or difficult to do so. Everyone will know where they stand much better when we speak the truth. Validate your partner, which means let your partner know what makes sense to you about what they're saying. Let them know you understand what they're feeling and can see through their eyes. This is a wonderful idea, as one of the main ways we connect to another person is through empathy. Validating your partner also communicates to them that they matter and that they're important. This is a direct antidote to contempt. The next thing to consider is shifting to appreciation, which can be very difficult when we're annoyed at the other person for whatever reason. If we can manage this though, it will be so much better as we mentally shift gears away from the uglier parts and start to look at the nicer parts of the relationship. We want to establish a ratio of at least 5 times as much positive feeling and interaction as negative. Claim responsibility. What can I learn from this? And what can I do about it? Do this to own your part in the conflict and as a result, be able to affect the most amount of change. It's better if a problem lies within me rather than outside of me, so I can do something about it. In this instance, our behaviors have a large influence on the other person, and so we can directly participate in shaping how the interaction goes. Rewrite your inner script. Replace thoughts of righteous indignation or innocent victimization with thoughts of appreciation and responsibility that are soothing and validating. Classic CBT reframing stuff. This is similar to claiming responsibility and taking it a step further to challenge and shift your thinking. Practice getting undefended, allowing your partner's utterances to be what they really are, just thoughts and puffs of air, and let go of the stories that you're making up. This is an acceptance and commitment therapy approach where we acknowledge thoughts as mental events and that words from the other person can be seen as puffs of air. When we can break things down like this, we can find it easier to take things less personally. As a small addition to this remedies section, I want to add this concept called the 3 R's, coined by Dr. Bruce Perry. He shows us that to help a vulnerable child to learn, think, and reflect, we need to intervene in this simple sequence. And let's face it, we can all relate to being like a child, even in our adult bodies. As you see in the image, the sequence starts with regulate, which means we must help the other person regulate and calm their fight, flight, freeze responses. It is nigh impossible to speak logic to a person who's dysregulated and emotional. The next step is to relate to the other person, which means connecting through an attuned and sensitive relationship. Think of some of that validating and empathizing we talked about before. You want the other person to understand that you can see why they're feeling what they're feeling, even if it's not the way you might have interpreted or reacted to the situation. Finally, we can go into the domain of reason. People are more willing to use reason and be reasonable when they're regulated emotionally and when they feel connected to through empathy. Keep these things in mind when dealing with people of all ages. And remember, most of all, you're less likely to get through to someone the more dysregulated and emotional they are. So there you have it. Now you know the 4 horsemen and what to do about them. And a bonus 3 R's too, for good measure. All fixed. See you at the next one.